All right, so you want to be a Java full stack developer, huh? Well, you came to the right place.
It's a pretty awesome field to be in right now.
Yeah, tons of opportunity. I mean, just look at this stack of resources you gave me. And the job market, booming.
Something like 35% growth every year since 2015. It's crazy.
That's wild. So yeah, finding the right opportunity is huge, but acing the interview, that's the real key.
Definitely. And that's what we're here for. This
Yeah?
deep dive. It's going to cover everything you need from the basics.
To the stuff that'll make your head spin.
Exactly. So, you ready to dive in?
Let's do it. But before we get all technical, what exactly is Java full stack development? I mean, we hear Java, we think coffee, but this is a whole different animal, right?
Totally different beast, yeah.
Yeah.
So Java itself, it's like this super versatile programming language, like a universal toolkit for building software.
Okay, so like any kind of software.
Pretty much, yeah. It's designed to be portable so it can run on like any computer.
Oh, that's a big deal these days.
Huge.
Mm.
And it scales really well. So you can build like a simple app or a massive system for millions of users.
Okay, that makes sense. But full stack implies it's more than just Java code, right?
Oh yeah, way more. As a full stack developer, you're working on both sides. The front end, which is all the stuff users actually see and interact with.
Like the buttons and menus and stuff.
Exactly. And the back end. That's all the behind-the-scenes magic, the server-side logic, the databases.
The stuff that makes it all work.
Exactly.
So if I'm in the interview and they hit me with why Java full stack, what's the best way to answer that?
Show them you get the big picture. It's not just about knowing Java, it's about creating entire applications. You enjoy both the creative side, the designing user interfaces,
Yeah.
and the problem solving, like building the logic that makes it all tick.
So you're like a one-person development team.
In a way, yeah.
Cool. Okay, before we go too deep, let's do a quick refresh on some Java basics. JDK, JRE, JVM. Those always trip me up.
They can be confusing, yeah. Think of it this way. JDK is your toolbox.
The Java Development Kit.
Right. It has everything you need to write and compile your code.
Okay, so what about JRE?
That's like the platform your program runs on, the Java runtime environment. It provides everything the code needs to execute.
And JVM, the Java Virtual Machine.
Ah, that's the magic ingredient. It's what lets Java run on any computer. It translates the code into something any machine can understand.
So like a universal translator for code.
Exactly. That's why Java's so portable. It can run on Windows, Mac, Linux, anything.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense now. So something else that keeps popping up these days is RESTful APIs. What's the big deal with those?
They're like the glue that holds the internet together. They let different applications talk to each other, exchange information.
So like if I'm using a travel app to book a flight.
That app is using an API to talk to the airline system, checking flights, getting prices, making the booking.
Yeah.
It's all APIs.
So it's like a secret language that apps use to communicate.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And RESTful APIs. They use a really simple way of communicating, like a universal set of verbs that everyone understands.
Got it. Okay, and then there's the Spring framework. We can't get into everything about it here, but what are the key things to remember?
Think of Spring as a super helpful friend. It takes care of all the tedious stuff in Java development so you can focus on the fun parts.
Okay, like what kind of stuff?
Well, one of its superpowers is inversion of control, IOC. Instead of your code having to manage all the dependencies, Spring handles it for you.
So it's like having a project manager for your code.
Yeah, something like that. It makes your code cleaner, easier to maintain. Another key feature is aspect-oriented programming, or AOP. This helps you separate out concerns like logging or security.
So making the code more modular.
Exactly. Easier to reuse, too.
It sounds like Spring really streamlines things. That's awesome. So we've covered the basics of Java and how applications communicate. But what about the more advanced stuff? What do experienced Java full-stack developers need to know?
Well, that's where we get into things like architectural patterns, how to structure complex applications.
Like blueprints for building software.
Yeah, think of it that way. Understanding Model View Controller Architecture, MVC, is super important. It's all about organizing your code into three parts. The model, which handles the data.
The view, what the user sees.
Right. And the controller, which manages how they interact.
So it's like separating the ingredients, the recipe, and the chef.
Perfect analogy. MVC helps you create clean, modular code. Easy to maintain, easy to scale.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. And what about Hibernate?
Hibernate. It's all about simplifying database interactions. Imagine you have a bunch of Java objects representing customers, right? Hibernate maps those objects to tables in your database.
So you don't have to write all those complex queries every time.
Exactly. It's a huge time saver.
Awesome. But browsing an application isn't just about making it work, is it? Security's got to be a major concern.
Huge concern. And you know interviewers are going to ask about it.
So how do you answer a question about ensuring the security of a web application?
Well, first, show them you take it seriously. Talk about implementing strong authentication. Verifying user identities.
And HTTPS, right, encrypting all the communication.
Definitely. And carefully validating user inputs to prevent vulnerabilities like SQL injection attacks. You got to stay up to date on the latest security practices.
It's an ongoing process for sure. Okay, so we've built this secure, well-structured application. How do we get it out into the world?
That's where CI/CD comes in. Continuous integration and continuous deployment.
Catchy name.
Right. It's all about automating the process of building, testing, and deploying your code.
Streamlining everything.
Exactly. CI/CD helps you catch errors early, collaborate better with other developers, release updates faster and more reliably.
So it's kind of like a well-oiled machine for software development?
Exactly. And speaking of efficiency, we can't forget about the cloud.
Yes, the cloud. Everyone's talking about the cloud.
But it's not enough to just say, I've used AWS or I know Azure. You got to show them you understand the practical applications.
Like, give specific examples.
Yeah. Talk about using AWS EC2 to host your application, S3 to store files, RDS to manage your database. Concrete examples of how you've used these tools to solve real-world problems.
Okay, so show, don't tell. That makes sense. Now, what about those tricky... Tell me about a challenging project questions. Those always throw me off.
Don't just pick a project at random. Choose one where you faced a genuine obstacle, a tight deadline, a tricky bug, something like that.
Okay, so highlight your problem-solving skills.
Exactly. Explain the challenge, the steps you took to solve it, the outcome. It's not about bragging. It's about showcasing your ability to handle tough situations.
That's really helpful advice. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from Java fundamentals to some pretty advanced stuff.
But there's always more to learn.
Oh, I bet. So what are some of those cutting-edge techniques that would really impress an interviewer?
That's where we get into things like REST versus SOAP web services, the benefits of asynchronous programming.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that, but it always sounded a bit mysterious.
We'll demystify it. And we'll talk about the magic of Docker and containerization.
Containerization, what's that?
It's a game changer, trust me. And we'll cover the importance of Corsair for web application security.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But before we dive into all that, ready for a little pop quiz?
Bring it on. I love a good challenge.
All right, let's see what you remember. First question. Which of the following is not a characteristic of Java? A, object-oriented. B, platform independent. C, interpreted. D, secure.
Ooh, it's a tricky one. They all sound like Java. What do you think, listeners? Take a second to think about it. Remember what we discussed about how Java works.
We'll be right back with the answer.
All right, so back to that quiz. The answer, it's C, interpreted.
Oh, right. Java's compiled, not interpreted.
Exactly.
Can you quickly remind us what the difference is?
Sure. So in a compiled language like Java, the code's translated into like machine-readable instructions before it runs,
So it's more efficient.
Yeah, but you got to compile it for each platform you want it to run on.
Okay, got it. So let's get back to those advanced concepts you mentioned. REST versus SOAP web services. What's the key difference there? Why should a Java full-stack developer care about that?
Okay, so imagine you're ordering a pizza online.
Pizza.
I'm in. So REST is like ordering through a simple website. Click a few buttons, pick your toppings, enter your address. Boom, pizza's on its way.
Sounds easy enough.
Right. Fast, easy, uses standard web technologies. Now, SOP, it's like ordering through a formal contract. You got to fill out this detailed form, sign it digitally, send it through a secure channel.
Way more complicated.
Yeah, but it's more reliable and secure.
So REST for speed, SOP for when security is super important.
Exactly.
Got it. Now, asynchronous programming. This one always makes my head spin. How do you explain that in a way that actually makes sense?
Okay, think about cooking dinner. Synchronous programming. It's like you have to finish each step one after another, chop veggies, wait for the water to boil, cook the pasta, and so on.
Yeah, that's how I usually cook.
It works, but you spend a lot of time just waiting around. Asynchronous programming. It's like multitasking. You can start multiple tasks at the same time.
So chop veggies while the water's heating up.
Exactly. Start the sauce while the pasta's cooking. It's all about maximizing your time.
So it makes web applications more responsive.
Right. More efficient, too, like having a whole team of chefs instead of just one.
That's a great analogy. I finally get it. Now, what about Docker and this containerization thing? Sounds
Mhm.
kind of sci-fi.
It's a game changer, for sure. So imagine you've built this awesome Java application. Now you need to get it running on different environments, right? A developer's laptop, a testing server, a production environment in the cloud.
Yeah, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be. Each environment might have different configurations, different operating systems.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. And that's where Docker comes in. It lets you package your application and all its dependencies into this self-contained unit called a container.
So it's like a virtual machine?
Kind of, but much lighter and more efficient. You can take that container and run it on any machine that has Docker installed
And it just works.
seamlessly, no matter the underlying system.
That's amazing. So it's all about standardization, making things portable.
Exactly. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about CORS, cross-origin resource sharing.
Core S. Okay, remind me what that's all about.
Security, specifically in web browsers. So imagine you have a banking website and you're logged into your account.
Okay, I'm logged in. What now?
Now imagine a malicious website tries to access your account information from a different domain.
That's scary.
Right. So CoreS acts like a security guard, preventing that unauthorized access. It makes sure that only trusted websites can interact with your application.
So it's protecting my sensitive data.
Exactly. Think of it like a bouncer at the door of your web application, making sure only the right people get in.
Okay, that's reassuring. So we've covered so much, from basic Java concepts to some seriously advanced techniques.
And our listeners,
Yeah.
they've been keeping up.
I think they're well on their way to becoming Java full-stack experts.
But before we wrap up, remember, acing those interviews isn't just about knowing the tech stuff. It's about showcasing your skills,
Yeah.
your experience, your passion.
Okay, so how do we impress those interviewers? What are your insider tips?
It's all about prep. Like you've done all the training. Now it's time to fine-tune your strategy, get in the right mindset.
You're right, like a final pep talk before the big game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So top things to focus on in those final days before the interview. Practice, practice, practice.
Okay, that makes sense. Practice what exactly?
Explaining concepts clearly, concisely. You got to be able to articulate things under pressure, grab a friend, do some mock interviews.
So, like, pretend I'm the interviewer grilling you with tough questions.
Exactly. And practice explaining things so that someone without a tech background can understand.
Oh, yeah, that's important. It's easy to get lost in the jargon, you know?
Keep it simple. Use analogies. Focus on conveying the core idea. Another key thing. Research the company and the specific role you're applying for.
Don't just show up blind.
Right. Go beyond the job description. Understand their products, their tech stack, their culture. Show them you're genuinely interested.
It's like showing up to a party and knowing the host's favorite music makes you a more welcome guest.
Exactly. And don't underestimate asking thoughtful questions. It shows you're engaged, you're curious. Prepare a few beforehand. Questions that demonstrate your interest in the company, the team, the technology.
Yeah, it's impressive when candidates come prepared with those kinds of questions. It makes the interview more of a conversation.
Definitely. And, speaking of resources,
Mm-hmm.
any suggestions for where candidates can brush up their skills or dive deeper into specific topics?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are tons of great resources out there.
Websites like Beldung are fantastic for Java concepts and the Spring framework. And for those cloud enthusiasts, the official documentation for AWS and Azure is a must-read.
What about, like, the online Java community? I've heard those are super helpful.
Oh, yeah. Forums like Stack Overflow are like a lifeline for developers. Answers to almost every question you could imagine.
It's like having a cheat sheet for all things Java.
Well, not exactly cheating, but definitely a great resource. And for those who prefer a more structured approach, online courses on platforms like Udemy and Coursera can be super helpful.
Okay, so lots of options out there. And remember, continuous learning is key in this field. Technology is always evolving, so you got to keep up.
Couldn't agree more. And to wrap things up here, remember, interviews are a two-way street. It's about finding the right fit, not just showcasing your skills.
That's a good point. It's about finding a company where you can thrive.
Exactly. So go in with confidence, be yourself, and let your passion for Java shine through.
You've got this. With everything we've covered in this deep dive and all those amazing resources out there, you're well on your way to becoming a Java full-stack developer.
Go build something amazing and never stop learning.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.